5 years had passed since Alpha Draven Cole stood before his pack and rejected the woman who was supposed to be his mate. He remembered the night clearly, though he had spent years trying to forget it. Lyra Voss had been standing beside him under the moon, hopeful and trembling, when he spoke the words that broke the bond in front of everyone. He had told himself it was necessary. A human-born Omega with no strong bloodline would never be accepted by the Blackthorn Council. He had a pack to protect, a reputation to guard, and no room for weakness. That was what he believed then. He never saw her cry. She simply turned and walked into the dark, and nobody heard from her again. Now, standing on the stone steps of his own territory, Draven watched a line of black cars roll through the gates. The Ember Court had arrived for the seasonal summit, a meeting between the great wolf kingdoms to settle old disputes and renew alliances. Draven had prepared for this for weeks, expecting King Ashen Draco, a name spoken with quiet respect across every pack in the region. What he had not prepared for was the woman who stepped out of the last car. She wore a deep green coat that moved like water around her, and on her head sat a crown of silver antlers, delicate yet unmistakably royal. Her hair was longer now, her posture straighter, her eyes sharper. For a moment, Draven's mind refused to accept what his body already knew. Then her scent reached him, carried on the wind, and his wolf surged forward, with a force that nearly knocked him off balance. It was her, Lyra. He gripped the stone railing until his knuckles turned white, forcing his claws back beneath his skin. 5 years of silence from his wolf, and now it howled inside him, as if no time had passed at all. The bond he thought he had severed clawed at his chest, alive and burning, refusing to be ignored. Lyra did not look at him. She walked past the gathered pack members with calm, practiced grace, her attention on the king beside her. Ashen Draco was tall, composed, and unreadable, but the way his hand rested lightly at the small of her back told a story clearer than any words. He was not simply her escort, he was her mate. Draven's beta, Callum, stepped closer and murmured, "That is Queen Lyra, mate to King Ashen." "You didn't know?" Draven said nothing. He could not find his voice. The summit began in the Great Hall an hour later, and Draven sat at the head of his table trying to focus on trade routes and border agreements, but his eyes kept drifting toward the far end of the room, where Lyra sat beside her king, calm and composed, discussing matters of state as if she had been born to it. She spoke little, but when she did, every wolf in the room listened. There was a quiet authority in her voice that had not been there 5 years ago. Back then, she had been soft-spoken, always looking to him for approval before she said anything at all. Now she needed no one's approval. He barely heard a word of the negotiations. His wolf paced restlessly beneath his skin, demanding he go to her, demanding he explain, demanding he fix what could not be fixed with words. He forced himself to stay seated, jaw tight, hands folded, appearing calm while everything inside him unraveled. During the break, he found himself standing near the garden doors when she appeared, alone for the first time since her arrival. She had stepped outside for air, unaware he was there, until she turned and saw him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them held 5 years of unspoken things. "Lyra," he said finally, her name feeling strange and heavy on his tongue after so long. "Alpha Cole," she replied, her tone polite, distant, the kind of formality one used with a stranger. The politeness hurt more than anger would have. He had imagined this moment countless times in his mind, imagined her shouting at him, blaming him, even crying. He had never imagined this quiet, unreachable calm. "You look well," he said, immediately regretting how empty the words sounded. "I am well," she said simply. "Thank you for the summit hospitality. Your pack has been gracious." She turned to leave, and something in him broke through the careful control he had held onto all day. "Wait," he said, stepping forward. "Please, how is this possible? A rejection like that, it should have left permanent damage. I studied it after you left. I know what it does to a wolf's soul. You should not be standing here whole." Lyra paused, studying him with an expression he could not quite read. Then she spoke, her voice steady. "I was not whole for a long time, Draven. There were nights I did not think I would survive what you did to me. But healing is possible, even from the worst wounds. if someone gives you room to heal, instead of demanding you fix yourself for their comfort. Ashen, Draven said quietly. Ashen found me 2 years after I left your territory, she said. I was still broken then. He did not try to claim me the moment he recognized the bond. He waited. He let me choose, again and again, every single day, whether I wanted him near me. He never once made me feel like a burden for needing time. That is the difference between being discarded and being chosen, Draven. You did the first, he did the second. Her words settled into him like stones dropped into still water, sending ripples through everything he thought he understood about strength and weakness. I was wrong, he said. I know that now. I was young, and afraid of the council, and I let their opinions matter more than you did. I have regretted it every day since. I believe you regret it, Lyra said, not unkindly. But regret does not undo what was done. It only tells you what kind of person you want to be next time. I hope you become that person, Draven. I truly do. But I did not come back for you. I came back because my mate has business with your kingdom, and I stand beside him as his equal, not as someone hoping you'll notice me. She walked back inside, leaving him alone in the garden with his wolf howling silently beneath his skin, mourning something it had never truly had the chance to keep. That night, Draven could not sleep. He paced his chambers until dawn, his wolf restless and desperate, driven by an instinct that refused to accept the loss all over again. By morning, he had made a decision that his beta immediately warned him against. There is an old clause, Draven said, spreading an ancient text across his desk. Second choosing. If a mate has not yet been formally sealed through the joining ceremony, the original bond can still be petitioned before the council. Callum stared at him in disbelief. Draven, she is already claimed by a king. Sealed or not, she has chosen him. If you bring this petition, you will humiliate her in front of every pack leader in the region. Is that truly what you want? To hurt her twice? I want her back, Draven said, his voice rough. I want to fix what I broke. You cannot fix a person by dragging them backward into the same pain you caused them, Callum said quietly. If you love her, even a little, let her stay standing where she is now. She is not broken anymore, Draven. Do not be the reason she has to rebuild herself twice. Draven did not listen. Later that day, he stood before the council, his petition in hand, watching the shock ripple across the room as he read the ancient clause aloud. Whispers spread through the great hall. Some pack leaders looked at him with pity, others with open disgust. Lyra sat beside Ashen, her expression unreadable, though Draven could see her hands tighten slightly around the arm of her chair. Ashen rose slowly from his seat, and the entire hall fell silent. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. I have heard of this clause, Ashen said, his tone calm but carrying an unmistakable weight of authority. It exists for mates who were never claimed, never chosen, never given the chance to build a life. It was never meant for a wolf who rejected his mate in front of his entire pack and let her walk into the world with nothing. He turned to look at Draven directly. You did not lose her to me, Alpha Cole. You lost her the night you decided your pride mattered more than her heart. I did not take anything from you. I simply gave her what you refused to. The council murmured in agreement, and Draven felt the weight of every eye in the room pressing down on him. His petition, once filed with desperate hope, now felt like the cruelest mistake he had ever made. Lyra stood then, quiet and composed, and walked to stand beside her mate. She looked at Draven, and for the first time since her arrival, her expression softened, not with affection, but with something closer to understanding. I do not hate you, Draven, she said gently. Hate would mean you still had the power to hurt me, and you don't. Not anymore. I want you to know that I am not angry that you tried this. I understand what desperation feels like. I lived inside it for a long time after you left me. But desperation does not give you the right to interrupt the life I built for myself. She paused, glancing briefly at Ashen before turning back to Draven. Do you know what I thought about, every single night after you rejected me? I thought I would never be whole again. I thought no one would ever want what was left of me. But I was wrong. Someone did want me, not despite my brokenness, but patient enough to wait while I healed it myself. That is a kind of love you never gave me a chance to see, because you were too afraid of what other wolves would think. Draven lowered his eyes, the weight of her words settling into every corner of his chest. "Thank you," she said quietly, and the words struck him harder than any accusation could have. "For what?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "For rejecting me," she said. "It was the cruelest thing anyone has ever done to me, and I would never wish it on another soul. But it also forced me to discover who I was, without waiting for your approval. I found strength I did not know I had. I found people who valued me without conditions. I found a king who never once made me feel small for needing time to heal. If you had not rejected me, I might have spent my whole life shrinking myself to fit into the space you allowed me to have. Now I do not shrink for anyone." The council chamber remained silent as she withdrew her petition request formally, closing the matter before it could go any further. Draven's own petition, without her cooperation, held no weight, and the council dismissed it without further debate. As the summit concluded and the Ember Court prepared to depart, Draven stood at the gates, watching the same black cars that had arrived days earlier, now preparing to leave. Lyra walked toward the vehicle beside her king, calm and unshaken, the silver crown still resting gently on her head. Just before she stepped into the car, she turned back one last time, meeting Draven's eyes across the courtyard. There was no anger in her gaze, no lingering hope, only a quiet finality that told him everything he needed to know. Whatever they once were to each other had ended long ago, on the night he chose fear over her. What stood between them now was simply the distance between who he used to be and who she had become. "Take care of yourself, Draven," she said softly. "I hope one day you learn to choose someone the way you should have chosen me." Then she was gone, the car pulling away down the long road, leaving Draven standing alone at the gates of his own territory. His wolf, for the first time in 5 years, grew quiet, not because it had found peace, but because it finally understood there was nothing left to fight for. Callum came to stand beside him, saying nothing for a long moment before speaking gently. "It is done now." "Yes," Draven said, watching the dust settle on the empty road. "It is done." He turned and walked back inside, carrying with him the heavy knowledge that some losses cannot be undone by power, by petitions, or by regret. Some mates are lost not to another wolf, but to the version of themselves they were forced to become in order to survive being let go. And sometimes, the only thing left to do is watch them walk away, wearing a crown you never gave them, standing taller than you ever allowed them to stand.